let's get back to this other story, the downing of the Russian fighter jet by Turkey's Air Force. Certainly steeped in controversy over violations of airspace. But as the finger pointing continues today, the markets and the world are concerned about a possible escalation that could include the United States. And that includes our next guest, retired Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann of the U.S. Army Special Forces. Lieutenant Colonel, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, hey, Bill, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You know, we were talking with a trader earlier about why oil moved on a story like this when in the past on geopolitical concerns, oil hasn't moved. And the trader said one variable this time around, and that would be Vladimir Putin. You know, he's a man of action. Do you agree? I mean, is that the wrong guy to pick on, if you want to put it that way?
Well, look, yeah, I mean, he definitely is an aggressive guy. And you know, I think probably as the facts continue to trickle in here, we'll see that the Russians actually were, you know, probably probing airspace. But I don't think that changes the fact that we're going to have to deal with Russia inside Syria. I say this in my book, Game Changers. I mean, it's like open mic night on the air campaign in Syria. I mean, it's like everyone's in there just dropping wherever they want to drop. And the fact that this has happened, that it hasn't happened sooner, frankly, kind of surprises me.
Do you agree with the president's strategy here, Scott?
You know, I don't. Well, in the sense that I don't think that this notion of, you know, really of leading from behind, which really, in my opinion, allowed Russia to come into the fold in the way that they are in Syria, where they're essentially conducting their own unilateral bombing campaign while the West conducts its bombing campaign. You know, I don't think that's a solid strategy. I think eventually that is going to come to a head. And that is a really big problem when you consider the fact, like, for example, Turkey is a NATO ally, and we're bound to defend them. So I think we're going to have to weigh in here and start to play a more assertive leadership role in what's going on in Syria, or otherwise this could get worse.
And you think that is troops in more U.S. troops in Syria, yes?
Well, you know, the whole boots on the ground aspect, Bill, I think is overused. In my book, Game Changers, what I talk about, the only thing that I've really seen work against ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other groups is where we put advisors like our Green Berets in these rough areas where ISIS sets up shop, right, and we help the locals push back on their own. That's what ISIS does. It's a bottom-up strategy.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you, the president during his news conference said that he wants to go with the strategy they've been going with, as he talked about how they've already been able to gain back some ground in, especially in Iraq, in those portions that ISIS had controlled, and taken out certain ISIS troops. But he said, but we have to find a way to accelerate that strategy. Is this what you're talking about?
Well, I think that's the problem, is we're trying to accelerate a fight against a local population that has all the time in the world. And I think trying to accelerate it during one presidential administration or something like that, you're just not going to get the results you're looking for. Look, these folks are operating in tribal societies where we have to go in and we have to establish relationships, and we have to help these people push back on their own. And that's going to take time. And Americans are going to have to realize, I think, that this is going to be a long war, and accelerating the timeline is not going to cut it.
All right. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.